Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of eDiscovery After Hours. My guest this week is Jeff Salling from Novartis. First of all, I want to point out he is the first guest that has chosen my favorite beverage, which is an old fashioned. Beyond that, we had an absolutely awesome, incredible conversation. Some of the highlights included the decision to move his family, right? Jeff is from Michigan, lived in Chicago. We talked about his decision, he and his wife, to move their family to Switzerland with young kids and what went into that. We talked about how he interfaces with sales and marketing people that reach out to him. And we also discussed whether or not eDiscovery is the practice of law. Honestly, I've said this a time or two before, but this conversation could have gone on for hours. I mean, there were so many incredible points that we barely got to touch on. So I know you are going to love this episode. Our sponsor this week is Discovery Master. If you are managing or monitoring document review projects in Relativity, you've got to check out Discovery Master. They automate reviewer QC. They automate key subsets of documents in Relativity so that project managers don't have to run safe searches or extract documents out of Relativity. They monitor budgets, just a whole host of things to make sure that every stakeholder that has access to Relativity but doesn't necessarily know how to use it, we put it all right there, point and click at your fingertips. Check out discoverymaster.co. Thanks for tuning in.
Quick time!
You don't know how to drink, your whole generation.
Drinks on the house.
Yes, sir.
No, wait a second. Drinks are 50% off.
Right.
No, wait a second. Double the price of everything.
And I work only 16 hours a day.
A union man only works 8 hours a day.
I belong to 2 unions.
And now, eDiscovery After Hours with your host, Ryan Short.
All right, Jeffrey Salling, welcome to the show. Cheers, man. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers. Thanks
Look
for
at
the
that.
invitation. Well done. You even have a little bit of orange in there.
Got to do it, man. I walked around the block to the Whole Foods at lunch and made sure I was prepared. We got to do it right, you know? This is eDiscovery After Hours. We're taking over the world one episode at a time.
Exactly. I've noticed a direct correlation to number of meetings on calendar and size of drink after work.
Yeah, you just told me off camera that this is a double, so I think you had a busy day.
No, far too many calls today.
I was joking with Ray, one of the partners I work with today. We have an 8-hour workday. I think he had about 37 calls. So
wow.
So
I feel better about my day. Ray must have had a bottle that night then.
No comment. I plead the fifth. I'm learning legal lingo like that now. Well, hey, man, it's great to be connected with you. I did one of these episodes a couple of months ago with Maureen Holland. And as we were chatting afterward, she was like, do you know who you need to talk to? And she gave me your name. And incidentally, you and I had already scheduled this. So it was a little turn of fate there. So I'm glad that we could finally get together and do this thing.
Yeah, me too. Well, I knew if you did one with Maureen, then I was a good company. So I felt comfortable in your hands after that.
I love it. That's fantastic. So, all right. So, Jeff, you are in New Jersey now by way of Switzerland, going back through Chicago and Michigan, correct?
Yep. There's a couple of stops, a couple of years in Austin and a brief stop in Miami as well, just for a few months right after law school to work in the prosecutor's office. But that's it. Those are the only places so far.
So I would say you kept getting, you were going south, getting progressively nearer to better weather, but then, well, it was Switzerland. So, and you, I believe you have young children, right?
Yeah. One young, one not young.
Okay.
I've got a 5-year-old as of 2 weeks ago, and I have an 18-year-old as of a month ago.
All right. Yes, that is young and not young. That's true. And so did they both go with you to Switzerland?
Yeah. Yeah, the little guy was just one, and the big girl was starting high school.
So I've always thought it would be really cool to work for someone who sends you abroad for a finite period of time, right? Where it's like, you're going to go for 2 years or a year, 3 years, whatever the term is. And it's this adventure, and we're going to lean in and embrace it while we're there, as opposed to just if somebody's like, your job is over there now. And I'm like, well, I mean, my family's here though. So talk me through kind of what the calculus was like in terms of, what was that like, with your spouse and with your children and, your parents and in-laws. Like, there's a lot that goes into navigating a big life decision like that.
Yeah, it was the latter. It was, you're going to be a local hire. So you're coming here at the time indefinitely. Parents actually, despite meeting my wife in Austin, both our parents live in Michigan.
Okay.
Which was near us in Chicago. So it didn't make sense. We had just given them another grandbaby, so that it didn't make sense. Pam and I were both pretty heavy into Biz Dev Roles that we had gone through the introductory challenges, and we're finally building up, Good Books business. So financially, it didn't make sense, and we liked what we were doing, and we had friends, and we understood the culture. So in a lot of ways, it didn't make sense. And we talked about it, and we said, well, we make more money here. We just had a 1-year-old, like, who leaves, for the unknown. We don't speak any other languages, more or less, German, Swiss German, French, which is what we'd need in that area. So why would we do it? And for us, it ended up being, for the kids, we do it. For us, we thought, there are advantages. It'd be nice for us to, experience more culture, but we're pretty set in our ways at this point. But for the kids, it was, man, like, how cool would that be to give them this experience where they get to take in so many different cultures, because we were on the German-French-Swiss border, the Novartis campus. From my window, I saw all 3 countries. For them to be able to, as we did on my mom's first visit, have breakfast in Switzerland, lunch in Germany, and dinner in France is just something that we couldn't pass up, because we said, for the big kid, what a great way to go through high school. You're going to experience a lot. And for the little man, it was, maybe you can be the first smart kid in our family who speaks multiple languages. So let's get you that early culture where everyone there speaks, at least 3 or 4 languages. You can be that kid for us in the family, and raise our intelligence profile a little bit.
Yeah, it's right. It's like, I always think about when I'm hiring somebody, is this person going to raise the average, talent level and culture level of the team? Yeah. And I haven't applied that to my children, but maybe I'll take a page out of your playbook and be like, come on, Rosie, you got to pull your weight here, kid. What are you doing? That's all we think of with our kids. Like, listen, mom and dad want to retire early, and we need you two to be able to do that. So that's right. So you have an 18-year-old. Is she off to school? What's the going on there? This is
she's looking right now. She applied to a bunch of school. We're really excited. She's already got accepted into 3 now. And now we're waiting. If you can't tell by attire, by facial hair, this is a dad whose wife and daughter were in Texas last week looking at schools. The dad was pulling, single dad duties around the house. And, I'm sure, like many others, even when I feel like I do a lot, and then my wife leaves, I'm like, do I actually help at all? Because I'm doing a million more things here. I feel like I do stuff when she's not here, but this is a lot of work for me. I mean, I viscerally relate to that statement. I compare myself to my father growing up. My dad's a great man, good husband, good father. But I compare myself to him. I'm like, man, I do way more around the house. And then my wife is gone for she'll get brunch with friends and get a haircut, and she'll come back a couple hours later. And I'm like, I'm drowning. I don't know. Like, you're a hero. You walk on water. I don't know how you do what you do. Yep. So, yeah. I just told her someone broke in and ransacked the place, and that's why it looks like this. We didn't have anything to do with it, but we're safe now. So think of the bigger picture. We're safe, and don't be mad about the house.
Yeah, I will scrub this part so she doesn't hear that. Your secret will remain safe with me.
Luckily, we're a few minutes in, so if it's anything about discovery I was talking at, she's done after 60 seconds. So I know I waited to say anything about her past the 60-second phase because I know she'd be like, all right, sweetheart, well, I'm sure you did great. I'm going to go on to something else now.
So you mentioned earlier that you had a background in a biz dev role. And since I'm not an attorney and not native to the legal industry, one of the things that's been interesting to me is, I come from the B2B, tech and technology enabled services world. And people just like embrace sales and marketing because it's like, hey, that's how you grow a product, and we do it too. And so cool. Like, legal seems to be very culturally different than that, right? Everybody it's marketing or business development, but it's never sales, right? You are an attorney, and you worked in at a large consulting firm, and then you worked at a service provider. Talk to me about how you kind of either came to seek out or embrace or fall into this biz dev world, and how did that kind of impact either your career development or how you interact then with other sales and marketing professionals?
Yeah. So I fell into it because in the consulting world, I did so much of it, just felt like I didn't see the financial benefactor of it. So I felt like others were being complimented very, very well for the work I was doing, and just kind of took a realistic look in the mirror and said, if I stay here, I'm X amount of years away from looking at that. If I go here, I'm 24 hours away from realizing that. And to some extent, I saw it as I'm going to bet on myself that I'm going to be able to figure this out. Coming from that background, it was, I don't know what this is, kind of starting from ground new and growing a new market for this company. But I think I'll be able to figure it out if they have patience with me. And I think that was the key. And I give a lot of credit to this particular organization because it was the only place I knew of that didn't do not compete for their sales folks. And when I asked about it, it was, well, if you don't want to be here, we don't want you here. We want you to want to be here. That meant a lot to me because anyone can say that, but by not having that contractual obligation, you're showing your people, you know what, we want you here, and we want you to be here. And that's the culture we want to bring. And then they were patient with me because I remember pretty early on reaching out to my boss and saying like, hey, how are things going? I feel like I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do now. He's like, oh, you're doing great. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I remember saying, I don't think I was clear enough. I'm going to come in tomorrow and I don't have anything to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to spend my time on. And I just, when you run projects, there's no shortage of work to do. You can always fine tune, review, discovery, collections, always some documentation you can work on, et cetera. But not having the biz dev background, despite a brief stint as a door-to-door salesman in college, which wasn't going to be helpful for discovery, unfortunately. I was in a learning curve, but they were really patient with me and really supportive, and they got me into a good spot. And then where it got really fun is my wife actually worked at a competing eDiscovery company in a biz dev role.
Oh, funny.
So we would go in to, I remember going into an office and them saying like, oh, do you happen to know a Pamela Salling? She was here earlier because there was orals on an RFP. And I said, I do know her. That is my wife. They're like, wait a minute. You guys work at competing vendor and sell the same thing. Yeah. What's that like at home? Well, we have a kid. So generally it's who helped her with homework, who's cooking dinner, we don't get into a lot of how did your orals for RFP go because we like our child and we don't want her to hate us because at the time we only had the one. The point you bring about how it's changed my role is dramatic because one, I reply to almost every email I see from a biz dev person because I think about the times I reached out and how obnoxious it was. I try to at least take a meeting, but I'm also, and if you ask to any of our vendors, I am extremely critical of the way things are done. And I get to the point because I feel like since I know I take so many more calls and meetings than a lot of my counterparts would, I need to be more direct, more critical. And I ask very pointed questions to make sure we get there right away. We're going to be able to forward this relationship or we're not. And I know probably the most popular phrase that I heard when I was living in Switzerland was, "Thanks for your candor," that I heard over and over and over again. And it's because of the Biz Dev Role of all I thought is like, I just want to know what you want. Like I'm asking all these different ways. I'm asking questions, implying, passive, aggressive. Why wouldn't someone just tell me? Because then I would do it. So now I try to tell as much as I can, but I'm sure at times comes across as a little bit much for some folks.
It's funny. I can't remember if I said this on a recent podcast or if it was just another Zoom call, like we all have all the time incessantly now. But I was told at one point in a professional setting, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I had heard that growing up from my mom, and I had heard it from a teacher, and I had heard it from a professor, and I had heard it from a college roommate. And at a certain point, it's like, oh, I'm the problem. And so candor is good insofar as it's constructive and, not it's said with charity, right? Mm-hmm. But I, to your point, I think that's fantastic. And I have much the same way. Luckily my days of, brutal cold outreach are behind me, but there's still an element and in what all of us do in terms of promoting ourselves, our firms, our practices, our products, et cetera. And so I'm the same way. I reply to most outreach for the simple fact of I know, hey, listen, if I reply to this person and say, hey, thanks for the note, we're not a prospect and here's why, I'm off their cadence, I'm off their list, or I can ignore that. And then I'm just going to get inundated with more messages for the next 6 months. I like your approach. I would be remiss if I didn't ask, what did you sell door to door in college?
I sold a coupon books, like buy one, get one, the little tabs. Yeah. I will say that, I want to say maybe 10% of the proceeds went to a wheelchair basketball team. Okay. But yeah, that's what I did for a summer.
What precipitated that role?
Oh, man.
You're allowed to say beer money. The show is called eDiscovery After Hours.
No, that's what I use selling my plasma for, which is the job I had that I think my mom's most embarrassed for. My brother and I went in and we thought, how's this bad? We had read that, if you can sell door to door, you'll be able to sell anything. Yeah. So let's learn here. And there happened to be the people that took us around were very cool and ended up being like really good friends for years and years to come. And they've gone off and done other, one's a pharmacist now. So they've been able to, turn it into more, I don't want to say more productive, but safer positions now, because thinking back about it, that time boggles my mind that you just go up and knock on people's door, because now people would look at you like you were crazy. Why aren't you texting me? What are you doing here? Yeah.
There's a comedian, Sebastian Maniscalco, if you know him. He has a whole bit about that. Like when you're growing up, right? Like your mom had this cake, this special cake and this special drink, and it was set aside that was just for guests. And, you're watching, like you remember TGIF on ABC, right? Like the whole family's playing board games and watching TGIF. And then, the doorbell rings and everybody like jumps up and runs to the door. It's like, we got company. And he goes, now it's like the doorbell rings and everybody's like, shut off the lights, hit the floor, don't make a sound,
Yeah. No, I had people make me lunch. People would bring me in and like bring me like a glass of water or a snack or anything. People were just so kind. But again, same thing when people come here, it's rare. But at different homes we've lived in, people show up and we try to, even things like, trash people, the mailman, we give them Christmas gifts. We get like the mailman gets a bottle of champagne. The other people get gift cards. Or I know, especially during COVID, we had a little snack and water Gatorade bin for delivery guys. 'Cause we're like, your job's got to be brutal right now and demanding, and you're doing amazing work. We can give you a glass of water or a bottle of water or a thing of Gatorade because it's the least we can do as you guys are going through these tough times. So we gave an additional respect for those who kind of come to our door on a regular basis.
Oh man, I love that. I never even thought of that. Now I'm embarrassed. Like, I feel like if Amazon isn't at our house like 4 days a week, the police do a wellness check on Lindsay. And I never even thought to do like, here's bottled water or Gatorades, like help yourself, thanks for what you're doing.
It's funny you say that. I thought that my wife had actually paid for Bezos to go to space, but maybe we co-funded that trip. I thought it was single-handedly us. So I'm glad to know others took a part in that.
As long as I didn't help fund the design of the rocket, that's okay. Oh man. All right, Jeff. So I could probably talk your ear off the next 2 hours, but should probably turn it to the first word of the show, which is eDiscovery. So I'd love to hear your industry soapbox. What's on your mind these days? What's going on?
For me, I think it's given back a bit. And not necessarily, definitely when it comes to mentorships and things like that, but I think it's on just educating people. I think too many people find themselves in, we're swamped, we're understaffed, we're working a ton. And what that generally means is we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not sleeping right, we're not learning anymore. And for me, the third one is really important. Not that it's more important than the other two, but I think people need to do a better job training their people, giving them learning opportunities, giving them new experiences. If you're the project manager, go on the sales call. If you're the salesperson, go and watch someone process some data. Just making everyone not just more well-rounded, but allowing them to see the different areas to say, maybe you're better at this, maybe you like it more. And I think like it more is really the key for me. So when I'm teaching, I always have a class dedicated to the different jobs that are in this field. But I branch out into cybersecurity, privacy, compliance, because to me, they're all the same thing with little nuances. But I want my people to know, especially since I'm teaching in law school, just because you're going to graduate, whether it's you have a JD or you are an attorney, that doesn't mean you like going into court. That doesn't mean you like writing contracts. That doesn't mean you like writing wills. You might like processing data. I do not, but I at least know I've tried it and it wasn't for me. But you need to know that there's all these different fields. And in a lot of cases, especially if you're not at a top law firm, you can make more money in this industry. There are plenty of attorney jobs at smaller firms, mid-sized firms, where you don't have Fortune 500 clients. You're not making six figures a year. You're making maybe mid-five. And there's a lot of discovery jobs now where you are making six figures. There's compliance jobs. There's a lot of security jobs out there. And the key is the education piece, to understand data, understand analytics, making sure you understand those things, but then understand what these jobs mean. Because I can't tell you how many times my students tell me, I don't know what eDiscovery is. I just like the description of it and it seemed fitting. And then we get into the class and they're like, oh, I've been doing eDiscovery at my job for the last 2 years. I just didn't know it was called that. Like I've done productions to the police, or I've done for the police, or to the government, or whatever it might be. And I'm just always baffled of, like, it's not that we call, maybe you call it discovery. There's not a difference to me of discovery and eDiscovery anymore, but you didn't grasp this was an industry. And as we see things like, to me, what I was really excited about in Disco's disclosures when they went public is they valued the industry. You can tell me if I'm wrong. I want to say they valued it at $84 billion.
I think they said something within like 10 years, it'll be that size or something to that effect. Yeah.
And I thought, how is this not an exciting place to be in? And so many people still don't know about it who are in law school or who are attorneys. And if there's one thing I do talk to a lot of attorneys, a lot aren't very happy with what they're doing. They want to do something else. Now, they might not be happier with discovery, but I am just such a big proponent in learning about other career paths, alternative career paths, and then taking different learning opportunities. And I would love to see the service providers in this space, especially, make sure that they're doing it, because I think it makes for more well-rounded, happier people.
Yeah. So, man, we could unpack a whole episode just in your answer there, because there was so much good stuff. To your point about people not being aware of different career paths, it's funny, coming in as an MBA, when you hear somebody's an attorney, like you just think everybody with a JD is a litigator, right? Or they're a transactional attorney. Like these are the only two things that business people interact with, right? And so, I mean, that's painting with broad brush there, but saying you're an attorney is like saying you're a business person. It's like,
yeah.
It's like, what in the world does that mean, right? Are you in a big firm or a small firm? Do you do contracts or privacy or discovery or blah blah blah? And then to dive into your point about discovery in particular, I'm fascinated, befuddled, confused, irritated that there are people out there who imply that eDiscovery is not the practice of law. Like I don't understand how that's a defensible position, because it's foundational to the practice of law. And so many cases can't go anywhere without it, right? And I mean, gosh, the phrase "there's riches in the niches" pop up. To your point about earnings, it's like I work for a company that few people have ever heard of, and we're doing just fine. And in marketing, a lot of times they'll tell you like, don't broaden how you position yourself, like narrow it, right? Because when you find your tribe, when you find that kind of that community of like-minded people, then that organic flywheel takes hold, and you find yourself serendipitously expanding into other networks, into other areas, into other verticals and whatnot. So yeah, man, that's just some of my rambling word vomit, top of mind thoughts to the excellent answer you just gave. So,
well, I really appreciated your points on the practice of law, because this is much more relevant today than it was 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. There are so many cases today that are decided by discovery. And this is what I stress on with our team internally, as well as the different people I mentor, is if we screw up, we lose the case. If we screw up, we get sanctioned. If we sue up, we get fined. And now we're in a big organization. If we screw up, we're on the front page of the paper, our stocks are going to plummet. We can't screw up. We need to make sure we do a great job. We do a compliant job. Frankly, we do more than a compliant job, because we don't even want the perception of we're playing in these areas where, we're in the gray. No, we're going to do much more than we know is proportional, much more than we know we need to do, because we feel like we have the obligation as an organization not to come close to these lines that are going to let anyone imply that we're hiding data, changing data, any of these things. And to some extent, especially today with the processes we built, it's almost impossible to do, because the person who would have access to change the data doesn't even know what they're getting it for. They're doing what we've asked them to do. They don't know that it's for the big investigation that's been in the paper, or the small investigation that no one knows about. But it has only been so much more prevalent, this belief that, we're getting there. I don't want to say that Discovery hasn't kind of raised their profile, but it's amazing how many cases you see. And there's actually been a trend over the last year, more cases being outright summary judgment dismissed because of violations. That's worst case scenario, but even adverse inference, et cetera, there's an uptick of those because of how important it is. And it's people, in some cases, not understanding what they're supposed to do. And when it's the attorneys, and it's the attorneys who aren't counseling their people, their clients correctly, or even worse, when it's the attorneys who are making the mistakes themselves, not just that they didn't counsel correctly. It baffles me because at this point we're 15 years in, and we've gotten a lot of press. And now it's interesting because when I see a new situation happen, I only think in discovery terms now. When I see, January 6th at the Capitol, I'm thinking, well, there's going to be a lot of text messages and recordings about what happened there. So that's what's going to happen. When I see John Gruden gets fired because of these emails, I think, oh man, how could anyone put such ignorant things in an email, even if you're that is ignorant to think these things? Now you're going to document it for others. And another 100 examples. Obviously, a few years ago with Hillary and the email servers, Tom Brady, all of these things come back to eDiscovery. And my favorite thing that I used to show my students, because I felt like they could relate to, was a case against Snoop Dogg. He was getting sued by Pabst Blue Ribbon because he hadn't fulfilled his marketing obligations. And part of it was like going into his Twitter to see, did he tweet about Pabst as much as he was supposed to? Did he? And it was like, for me, all I thought is, to prove their case, they looked at the 3 social media apps he was supposed to go on and do what he was supposed to do, probably some emails and text messages as well, to find out, did Snoop forgive or fulfill his marketing obligations? And this is every single case we have now. It's just the only difference is small scale and big scale.
Yeah.
And one more thing to touch on, just because I was looking at my picture and realized, my background is actually Pride Fest in Miami, and it's my daughter standing in front. And my shirt is the love shirt from, Autism Speak. So when I talk about educating people and developing people, it also is important that you do it the right way, that you have diverse teams, that you're thinking about neurodiversity, that you're thinking about the LGBTQ plus community, and that you're making sure that not just everyone on the team's comfortable, but frankly, you're having conversations to make sure that you're understanding the different advantages that everyone brings to the team, because we all are coming with different experiences. We're all coming with different mindsets. And when you're building a team, and I'll say my last hire, which I'm so thrilled to get this person, the reason I was so adamant we needed to get a role for this person is, out of everyone I work with, she's the person who I feel like we butt heads the most. We have the most different views on how we'll move forward. And that, to me, is how you build a great team. It's not, we do everything the same, so they're going to support all my ideas. It's, they have different views on a ton of stuff. We're going to come to a conclusion that's going to be better for the organization. There might be some stress in getting there, but we have a ton of respect for one another because we both think the other one's really smart and on top of their game. And I think that piece is sometimes missed in the hiring process that is important.
And Jeff, that's another thing we could do a whole episode about is productive conflict. One of my a good friend of mine, when we worked together a number of years ago, he said, I already agree with myself. I don't need to be surrounded by yes men and yes women. I need people who are not afraid to shoot bullets through what I'm saying, because then if it holds water, we're all on board. And if it doesn't, we pivot now before it's too late. A whole incredible host of ideas. You're going to have to come back on and do another episode next year. This was awesome.
I'm going to work on really good things like that, because it takes me 7 paragraphs to get through what your person did in 2 sentences. So I'll work on my conciseness moving forward.
I love it. All right, man. Hey, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Good talking to you.